The Bravosi galley Triton's Mercy glided through the morning haze that clung to Blackwater Bay like a half-remembered dream. Its black hull was mirror-smooth, as though the carpenters who shaped it had polished each plank with oiled silken ambition, and its single great lateen sail, white as moon-kissed bone, bore the sigil of the Iron Bank, an open iron vault, overflowing with silver coin. Dockhands on the quayside felt the hush that preceded the vessel, a silence broken only by the gentle slap of water against barnacled pylons. No trumpets blared, no banners flapped, yet those who labored on the docks found themselves slowing, staring, caught by an unspoken gravity. Ships from the summer isles arrived wreathed in color and laughter. Tyroshi trading cogs rattled with spice crates and indigo bundles. But a Bravosi galley with that sigil meant something altogether different. It meant accounts, reckoning, consequence. Teco Nestoris stood at the prow, gloved hands resting lightly on the carved wooden capstan, eyes narrowed against the rising sun. A lean parchment of a man, Tycho was neither tall nor striking, yet there was an austerity to him that made hushed conversation falter in his presence. His cloak was a muted purple, pinned with a single shard of jade, his beard trimmed to a cautious point, a living symbol of the bank's understated power. He was not alone. A half-score of clerks and factors attended him, each carrying oaken chests reinforced with iron and sealed with wax sigils. Quills and ledgers, wax tablets, pouches of counting stones. These were their swords and shields, precise enough to cut a kingdom to ribbons. They reached the royal quay without ceremony. Gold cloaks appeared belatedly, summoned by some dockmaster's panicked runner, but Tycho merely inclined his head in polite acknowledgement and stepped onto the pier. Sir Lexi, the foremost of his clerks, produced an ivory tube bound with bronze. Within lay vellum sheets bearing signatures. Signatures that would matter more than swords before the day was out. A brisk carriage ride carried them up serpentine streets toward the Red Keep, past fishmongers crying their dawn wares, past gaunt washerwomen scrubbing steps, past guttering braziers where last night's ashes still whispered of cheap wine and cheaper solace. The city breathed, unbothered by their progress. Only in the faces of certain merchants, men with ledgers of their own, did Tycho see the flicker of recognition, the ripple of unease that preceded a storm. At the summit, 6 crimson-armored Lannister guards barred the gatehouse with crossed halberds. Tycho handed over a plain scroll bearing the blindfolded seal of the hand of the king. Lord Eddard Stark's ink was still fresh. The Northman had written the day the Raven arrived, summoning the bank's emissaries with the dry courtesy of a man who understood debts even a deerwolf could not outpace. The guards stepped aside. In the small council chamber, the air smelled of dusty parchment and candle grease. Lord Stark sat grim and formal at the table's head, his gray eyes the color of winter stone. Beside him, Lord Stannis Baratheon, broad-shouldered and iron-jawed, seemed carved from another, angrier quarry. The master of coin, Petyr Baelish, lounged near the shutters, a half-smirk dancing at the corner of his mouth. Grand Maester Pycelle dozed upright, thin lips fluttering as though dreaming of roses. Queen Cersei's chair was conspicuously empty, though her scent of myrrh and malice lingered. "Master Tycho," Ned Stark said without flourish. "You are welcome." "Lord Stark." Tycho bowed. "I thank the crown for its courtesy." Lord Baelish's eyes glittered. "We understand Davos has concerns." "A single concern," Tycho corrected gently, producing the scroll. "Repayment." The word tolled across the chamber with the dull resonance of a funeral bell. Ned's jaw tightened. Stannis' gauntleted fist tapped the table once, the iron ringing against oak. Pycelle stopped snoring. Baelish affected surprise. "Repayment, my lord. Why, surely we have always serviced the crown's obligations." "Men Narelle." Tycho unrolled his parchment, revealing columns of figures marching like a silent army. Principal, interest, penalties, compounding by moon and season. The crown's debt stands at 8,800,000 golden dragons, exclusive of the short-term notes maturing next moon turn. The Iron Bank has extended grace 4 times since His Grace Robert's ascension. No further extension is possible. Baelish's smile never reached his eyes. We are, alas, between tournaments. Stannis growled. Between sense and ruin, more like. Tycho's voice remained courteous, but every syllable was a blade. The bank respects the sovereignty of the Seven Kingdoms, yet coin is a language older than crowns. We have come to foreclose. The chamber held its breath. Foreclose. Not threaten. Not negotiate. The word carried the chill of deep water. Baelish finally abandoned levity. Foreclose upon what, precisely? Upon the revenues of the Iron Throne, its rights to mint and tax, its royal fleet, and all royal lands held in fee simple. Effective this 8th day of the 6th moon, unless the debt is satisfied in full. Mensiao. Ned's knuckles whitened. That is impossible. Which is why I seek audience with his grace forthwith. Tycho's polite bow drew a short bark of fury from Stannis. My brother is hunting boar, Stannis snapped. He cares more for crackling fat than ledgers. Then we shall wait upon his leisure, Tycho said. But the bank waits only until sunset. A hush. Then Baelish laughed softly. You would depose a king by dusk. Tycho's glance was glacier cool. The Iron Bank requires no thrones. Only payment. Should that fail, we invest elsewhere. Nendoao. Stannis rose. Elsewhere. Tycho folded the parchment. Stability is coin, Lord Stannis. The bank values coined. When the Braavosi withdrew, a storm broke behind the small council's doors. Baelish argued that the crown might refinance through the Lannisters. Pycelle wondered if a public levy, the faith militant had done so centuries past, might suffice. Stannis muttered about cutting court extravagance, selling Myrish tapestries, trimming Baelish's purse strings. Ned alone stared at the chamber's high windows, where the city lay sprawled beneath summer sun, unaware that its future had been weighed against a column of ink. That night, Robert Baratheon returned reeking of sour ale, with boar's blood crusted beneath his fingernails. He laughed when Ned explained the crisis, swayed by wine and bravado. Let the Braavosi pinch their coppers. I'll hold a melee. Charge 10 gold each night. They'll queue from Dorne to the neck. He slapped Ned's shoulder hard enough to jar bone. And if the bank balks, I'll pay them in steel. Yet dawn proved less merry. Tycho Nestoris returned to the keep beneath a white banner of parchment. An order countersigned by the Sea Lord of Brava Stato. The Iron Bank had already purchased the contracts of the Myrish-Lyseni trade consortiums, moving grain up the narrow sea. Their ships would divert to Pentos and Volantis. King's Landing would see no wheat at harvest. The bank froze all credit letters issued in the crown's name. Even the master of the Royal Mint found his delivery of tin smelt cancelled. The bank owned the mines in Andalos from which the ore was due. Panic fluttered through the Red Keep like caged sparrows. Cersei, returning from the Sept of Baelor, demanded to know why her household guard went unfed. Renly, charming and bright, perhaps the Reach's gold could plug the wound. Stannis snarled that begging flowery coins was beneath Baratheon dignity, though his own purse was thin as gruel. Baelish promised quicksilver schemes, a lease on the Storm Dancer Guildhall, a surcharge on the brothels, a lottery for poor fools, chasing the promise of unminted wealth. Ned asked how a kingdom could bet its future on dice while winter loomed. The spider, Varys, watched it all with solemn black eyes, silent as confession. Across the sea, Tycho's ravens flew swift. In Braavos, the Iron Bank auctioned derivatives on the crown's debt, selling slices of risk to Pentoshi magisters and Volantine triarchs. Markets whispered, trembling. In Lys, captains of the Company of the Rose received tidings. Secure shipping lanes for Braavosi coin and receive double their usual fee. In Tyrosh, the Archon weighed a request to intern Westerosi merchantmen found in his harbors. Across every port city the word spread. The crown of Westeros had defaulted. Lord Tywin Lannister heard it first from his agents in Braavos, a coded scroll reading, "The lion's debtor roars upon broken legs." He summoned Maester Arnulf at dawn and dictated dispatches by the dozen, commands to Gold Road garrisons, directives to Casterly Rock's treasurers. Later that morning, his crimson banners were seen flying over the docks of Lannisport, where half a dozen crown-owned cogs lay at anchor. By midday, silent columns of Lannister men-at-arms boarded each vessel under claim of salvage for unpaid harbor fees, fees newly decreed by the Warden of the West. Word sped to the capital. Tywin had seized the royal fleet on the western coast. Robert raged, but rage bought no grain. As barrels emptied, breadlines thickened, small folk grumbled that king's men extorted copper stags for moldy loaves. Gold cloaks tried to quell riots but lacked coin for wages. 2 centuries-old companies, the Ironmakers and the Dragon Gate Watch, simply disbanded, their men melting into alleyways. Fires flared in Flea Bottom, while the nobles feasted on imported Dornish fruit, smuggled upriver under cover of night. Ned, cornered between duty and disaster, urged Robert to name a true master of coin, someone who dealt in honesty, not promises. Baelish laughed at that, until Robert ordered him from the chamber with a clenched fist. The next dawn Baelish was gone, along with 3 royal chests and a pair of comely septa. He sailed by fast galley for the Fingers to secure alternative funding. He would not return. It was Stannis who first suggested collateralizing the realm's Dragonbone throne itself, an obscene but practical gesture. Taeko merely inclined his head. The bank accepted bizarre securities. A statue's grip on fame, the parchment of a forgotten pact. But symbolism mattered less than value. The throne was priceless only in legend. Dragonbone fetched little against 8 million dragons. Taeko's counteroffer was chilling. Abdication. Forgive the crown's debt, Taeko proposed. And the Iron Bank shall instead invest in a claimant whose balance sheet is sound. Renly brightened then, mistaking the words for endorsement. But Taeko's gaze slid past him to Stannis, whose claim of legitimacy outweighed younger brother's charm, and who, as Lord of Dragonstone, possessed a smaller, manageable purse. A purse the bank could fill, expecting strict repayment. The offer hung in the air like a headsman's axe. Robert refused. I'll not set aside my crown for bankmen counting coppers. He roared, heaved a golden wine flagon across the chamber, splitting Taeko's parchment chest in a glittering shower of coin. But resolve bled away with ale. He staggered to his solar, muttering of tournaments and free-flowing cups. Cersei watched her husband crumble with cold calculation. She wrote to her father that night, suggesting a Lannister-funded bailout, in exchange for the royal succession being clarified, in favor of Joffrey debt. Tywin's reply came by Raven 2 days later. If the Iron Throne cannot honor its debts, why should the Rock honor its oaths? The implication was clear. Tywin would not throw gold into a well whose bottom could not be reached. In the streets the common folk spoke of Braavosi warlocks conjuring famine, of faceless men haunting granaries. Priests of the Red God preached that the crown's debt was proof of divine wrath. The Septons blamed sinful rulers who dallied with whorehouses while widows starved. Even inside the keep, supplies dwindled. The royal kennels released half their hounds into the Kingswood, lest the beasts gnaw the pages from court ledgers. Wailing echoed through stone corridors at night. Servants dismissed without wages, children crying for porridge. The eerie clatter of counting stones as Iron Bank clerks worked by candlelight, tallying doom. On the 3rd moon of summer, Robert summoned every great lord then present in the capital. Renly and Stannis, Mace Tyrell, come to flaunt bright plumage. Oberyn Martell, for the funeral of an old foe. Balon Greyjoy's envoy. Even Walder Frey's adult son sniffing opportunity like hounds. The hall brimmed with silk and steel. Robert ascended the Iron Throne in crimson doublet, stretched tight across his belly. Yet the sword points that formed the seat seemed to prick harder than ever. Beside him stood Ned Stark in plain wool black as a northern knight. My lords, Robert began, voice raw. You know our plight. A murmur answered. They knew. The Iron Bank demands payment. Payment we have not. They would ruin Westeros to line their ledgers. Lord Mace spoke first, all puffed complacency. The Reach is wealthy, your grace. If you would marry my daughter. Renly coughed theatrically. Robert ignored him. I'm wed already. Oberyn's smile was thin as a poniard. Not all debts are counted in coin, I hear. Swift anger flashed in Cersei's green eyes, but Ned quelled her with a look carved from ice. Stannis stepped forward. Grace, the state is nigh insolvent. You must cut expenses. Dismiss half the royal household. Abolish the tourneys. Cease building that new septy. Share the feast of bones, muttered Oberyn. Stannis' nostrils flared. Or we may forfeit more than coin. Robert's jaw worked. I'll not rule from a beggar's bench. Silence. Then Renly's velvet voice slid between tension. There is another path, brother. The Tyrell coffers. Stannis barked. Buy the realm's future with Reach roses? The bank will choke on thorns soon enough. Taeko, standing discreetly near the throne's base, spoke for the first time. The bank is prepared to support a ruler who honors contracts. Gasps rippled like wind on wheat. The words were not threat. They were declaration. Robert's cheeks blazed. You dare. I speak only fact, your grace. Taeko bowed. Contracts are the sinew of kingdoms. Sinew.al. The hall's gloom seemed to fold around that word. Robert's gaze darted to Ned, seeking, perhaps, a sword of counsel. Ned's heart hammered with memory. His father's feet dangling above Great Joan's sobs, the smell of burning hair, the stillness after. Oaths mattered, debts bound. But desperation had its own geometry. Name your paymaster, Robert spat. Who would you buy to sit this throne? Taeko's dark eyes rested on Stannis, then swept across the lords, Mace arrayed in green and gold, Oberyn in sunset silk, the Freys fidgeting, the Greyjoy envoy cold as brine. Every noble there saw the line of coin leading from iron bank coffers to the world they coveted. Possibilities unfolded like a game board of Sivas, and each measured his next move. That night Ned paced his solar. The tapers burned low, shadows lengthening like doubts. Letters lay scattered across his table. Pleas to Winterfell for grain, drafts to the Vale, gentle inquiries to River Run. Every house would want something. Gold, marriages, a share of the Iron Throne's broken carcass. He turned at a soft knock. It was Varys, pale and soft-footed. The bank's ships weighed at anchor, the eunuch whispered. 8 dawn, they sail north to White Harbor, east to Gulltown, south to Old Town, each to collect the hearts of lords they will fund. Soon the crown's banners may fly beside those of foes. What would you have me do? Ned asked. Survive. Varys's eyes were full of sorrows. For the realm, if Robert falls. Robert will not fall. Yet Ned heard hollow in his own voice. Elsewhere Robert drank alone, oblivion his only counselor. Outside the city walls, storms gathered. On the 10th day, after Tycho's declaration, the price of bread tripled. Riots erupted on the Street of Flour. Gold cloaks killed 8 before nightfall. Tycho's agents tallied losses, noting them against the crown's account. Word came of Bravo Sea galleys seizing royal granaries at Maidenpool, of iron bank factors paying double wages to small folk loading grain onto foreign hulls. The crown's own harvest sailed away beneath strange colors. In the Red Keep, Maester Pycelle collapsed in the rookery, wheezing out. Too many ravens, too many secrets, too little sleep. His apprentice found the Grand Maester dead beside an unfinished message. Winter is not the only specter upon us. Birds winged into twilight unguided, bearing half-written pleas. Then, as if the gods themselves demanded a final coin, a white boar appeared near the Kingswood Brook, where Robert often hunted. The king, drunk and furious, pursued it with only Sir Barristan for escort. Hours passed. By the time Barristan returned, Robert sagged in the saddle, belly ripped wide. Maester staunched blood but could not staunch fate. Fever took him 3 nights later. Cersei forbade all but her hand-picked guards from the king's chamber. When Robert finally whispered last words, they were not of love or legacy but of debt. A single name rasped through cracked lips. Net. Stannis left the city before dawn. Some said he rode to Storm's End to rally banners. Others claimed he had already pledged his loyalty, and future treasury, to Tycho's waiting galley. Renly vanished soon after, escorted by Sir Loras, and a dozen Rainbow Guard to Highgarden. Lord Tywin marched east along the Gold Road with 40,000 men, crimson banners unfurling like bloodied parchment. The realm tore like cheesecloth in rough hands. At Robert's funeral, the Iron Throne sat draped in black velvet, though its sword still glinted. Taco attended in simple gray, head bowed. He said no prayer to the Seven. The Iron Bank observed other rites, the calculus of investment. A dead king could not pay, but a living claimant might. Even Joffrey, crowned that dusk in a rushed coronation, could fetch coin if a Lannister treasury lay behind him. Yet rumors whispered that Braavos believed in Stannis, the stern, uncompromising debtor who might cut flesh from bone to honor dues. War seemed certain, but war was commerce. The bank financed cell sales from the Stepstones, leased galleys to House Martell for escort duty, sold insurance contracts to Westerosi traders gambling on survival. Every sword forged, every loaf shipped, every raven flown. All earned fractions of dragons flowing eastward. The crown's default became Braavos's windfall. Ned Stark watched Joffrey's ascent with sick dread. Cersei's smile was glass-sharp as Joffrey's hand closed around the crown's stag points. The boy hissed when one pricked him, then laughed, smearing blood across gold. The court roared approval. Tywin's envoys tallied costs in the back of the hall. Tycho noted the boy king's insolvent realm, marking risk against opportunity. That night Ned dreamed of the north, of silent snows, of a lonely king who asked only for peace. But at dawn he would stand beneath an iron throne, grown colder than any winter, debt a chain thicker than ice, and wonder which was heavier, a kingdom's promises or a bank's retribution. Outside, the Braavosi galleys raised anchor. Whether they sailed to Dragonstone, to Gulltown, or to war, they sailed under fortune's wind. The crown owed them more than coin now. It owed them the future, shaped ledger by ledger, life by life, until all the realm's songs would be sung in the minor key of debt paid or debt endured. And in the quiet, before the drums of conflict, the Iron Bank waited, patient as deep water, knowing that every kingdom, like every man, met its reckoning when the tally came due. A hush had settled over the Red Keep's stone galleries in the wake of Robert's funeral, as though the mourning draperies had absorbed every sound but the softest footfall. Cersei Lannister prowled the Queen's ballroom like a caged lioness, her green gaze skittering across the crowded tapestries at invisible threats. She saw them in the servants who dared not lift their eyes, in the hedged words of her cousin, Sir Lancel, in the whispering ribbons of smoke that twisted up from the sconces. But most of all she saw them in Lord Eddard Stark, silent, watchful, unbending, even when he lingered far down the corridor outside the council chamber. That morning she summoned him. When Ned arrived, her maids withdrew at a flick of her pale fingers, leaving them alone but for heat shimmering around a hearth too large for the season. Dust motes wheeled in the ruddy light. One of the Iron Throne's gilded sword points had pierced her silk sleeve earlier in the day. Fresh blood stained the cloth. Ned bowed stiffly. "You look weary, Lord Stark." She began, voice threaded with false sympathy. "King Robert's death burdens us all, yet the realm must march on." "His Grace Joffrey is the burden now," Ned answered. "The small folk starve. Riots brew under every archway. We have no coin to pay the city watch, let alone feed the hungry." "Then so." Cersei's smile was small and cold. "The Iron Bank wrings us dry. Only because the crown refused their terms when it still could bargain." Ned's tone rasped like a winter branch. "We must restore trust, open the granaries, curb excess, audit every parchment Littlefinger left behind. Trust will not fill bellies." She stepped closer, jasmine perfume warring with rushes and smoke. "But grain from the reach will. Lord Tyrell has offered 100 wagons of oats and barley. All he asks is confirmation of my son's coronation and the dismissal of Lord Stannis' claim," Ned finished. "And what of Stannis' fleet? Dragonstow's galleys choke the narrow sea. Without Stannis, we lose the bank's favor entirely. The Tyrell wagons would rot in harbor." Cersei's eyes narrowed to emerald slits. "Do you truly think Stannis will spare you?" He would burn this city to cinders to pay a debt he never incurred. Perhaps, Ned conceded, but he would pay it. He bowed again and left her smoldering in sullen fury. Below in the stables, Sir Davos Seaworth tightened the girth of a gaunt gray gelding. Rain pattered on the slate roof above. Lightning flickered beyond the open arch. He wore no sigil, only plain rough-spun that smelled of salt and pine sap carried across leagues of sea. Yet, under the homespun, lay a parchment sealed with the dire wolf of Stark, an invitation to parley in Ned's solar. Davos had been surprised to receive it, but Stannis had ordered him to accept. Find where the wind drifts, the Lord of Dragonstone had commanded. Then row against it. As Davos swung astride, a voice called from the shadows. Varys glided forth, draped in lavender silks that shifted like pale water. A storm gathers, the spider murmured. Beware of being caught mid-channel when it breaks. Davos inclined his head, feigning dull confusion. Storms come and go. Sailors ride them. Some are drowned. Varys laid a gentle hand on the horse's flank. The Iron Bank's silver flows deep, yet it brings whirlpools where once were bays. One might ask which hulls have already foundered on hidden rocks. Davos offered no reply. He clucked to the gelding and rode through iron-barred gates into a city stinking of ash and fear. Tycho Nestoris met Stannis on the ramparts of Dragonstone at sunset, where wind ripped the banner of the fiery heart until it cracked like a sail. A thin crescent moon shone above black waves frothing around the island's basalt fangs. Stannis wore plain brigandine and a sword belt. His newly grown beard was iron gray, framing a mouth set tight as rivets. "The bank extends terms," Tycho said without preamble. He produced a leather scroll case. 12 galleys laden with Braavosi grain will sail tomorrow. Upon landing, your levy shall escort every sack to villages between Storm's End and Maidenpool. Each household receives allotment in your name. Stannis' eyes flickered. Charity? Collateral? Tycho unfurled the parchment. In exchange, the Iron Bank will settle the overdue interest on the Crown's debt, provided you declare yourself protector of the realm and publicly affirm readiness to assume liabilities. Stannis studied the shimmering ink. 6 million dragons to feed peasants whose hearts are easily swayed by gold cloaks and lions. I might win their bellies, not their swords? Tycho's breath steamed in the wind. And yet a starving man's gratitude is fierce. He will march for the hand that fed his child. Stannis looked seaward, where torches danced along the decks of Braavosi ships like will-o'-wisps. I will sign. He dipped the quill Tycho offered, pressing his name into soot-black ink. But I will not be their debtor forever. Debts inspire industry, Tycho replied. The bank would rather a kingdom of work than a graveyard of corpses. Stannis snorted. Tell that to the corpses King's Landing breeds. Meanwhile, Ned received Davos in a quiet antechamber, hung with faded tapestries depicting the Reach in bloom. Rain snaked down the unshuttered window, painting the city's spires in skeins of quicksilver. They spoke in low voices. Only a lone sconce flared, casting twin shadows that danced like wrestlers across the rug. Stannis lacks numbers, Davos admitted, but he will not bend. Ned's fingers drummed the table. He has the Iron Bank. With their coin, Hellhire sells words enough to rival the Lannisters. Them sawash. Davos said. But every sellsword has ears. They know the small folk eat sawdust bread, while the royal kitchens feast on peppered lark. If the city starves much longer, sellswords might join the mob rather than fight it. Ned closed his eyes, recalling a frigid courtyard in Winterfell, where Maester Luwin once told Bran, "A lord's first duty is the welfare of the weak. Robert's debt is a chain. We must break one link to unwind the rest." How? Davos asked. By smuggling grain upriver, Ned said. Greywater Watch sits hidden in the neck. Howland Reed owes me favors. Barges can slip from Maidenpool through marsh channels the Iron Bank's galleys can't follow. Davos weighed the idea. Dangerous work. The Crown's own harbor masters might seize the cargo. I will secure safe passage, Ned promised. If we can feed the poorest districts, we buy time and goodwill. Davos rose. Stannis will not oppose feeding poor folk. He will oppose paying Lannister interest rates to do so. Ned's eyes hardened. Then let him stand at my side in truth instead of haunting the horizon like a thunderhead. They clasped arms. Davos departed through servants' passages, melting into the evening's hush. But secrets rarely stay hushed long in King's Landing. By the next day, rumor of Stark grain flotillas darted across taverns like minnows. Within hours, Cersei's informers carried news to the Tower of the Hand, where she found Lord Varys already perched on a cushioned bench, plump hands cupping a steaming tisane. The Hand means to undermine the bank's blockade, Varys explained calmly, by ferrying northern grain downriver. Cersei's nostrils flared. If the mob believes Stark sustains them, they will love him more than my son. Love is a fickle coin, your grace. Withdraw the food, and it may flip chew. She paced, trailing the scent of crushed roses. We must intercept those barges. Varys sipped quietly. A cadre of sail sails under Sir Osred Kettleblack can depart the harbor at midnight, intercept near Massey's Hook, sink or seize as your grace wills. Cersei nodded. Is that? And let the small folk watch their grain turned away by Stannis' own men, barrels stamped with the fiery heart. It will pit them against him. Mender Rao. Varys dipped his bald head. An elegant gambit, yet risky. Should word surface that the crown ordered the seizure, then see word does not. Cersei hissed. Blame Stannis. Blame the bank. Blame ghosts if you must. Varys inclined his head once more, then drifted away like mist evaporating under sun. That night, a moonless black swallowed the Blackwater rush as 3 lean river barges slipped past Dyer's docks, each piled with burlap sacks. Davos paced the deck of the foremost, smelling wet rope and mildew. A single lantern, hooded against watchful eyes, painted dim gold across the cargo. He had recruited smuggler friends, old hands from the Stepstones, promising Stark coin at voyage's end. They trusted Davos more than any noble's purse. But at the river mouth, silhouettes surfaced, longboats powered by 10 oars apiece, gliding like sharks beneath the stars. The barge's lookouts shouted moments before grappling hooks hissed through the gloom. Blade met club. Curses cracked. Someone screamed and fell into choking black water. Davos drew his short sword, grimly parrying a sail's axe. Rain began to fall anew, drumming the deck with frantic fingers. The lantern toppled, shattered, and flame licked across spilled oil. Orange tongues leapt skyward. Out of the glare, Davos recognized Sir Osfried's sneer. Smuggling for wolves now, Onion Knight. The Queen prefers her grain taxed, not stolen. Davos spat rain. You'll drown in that purse, bastard. He lunged. Steel rang. Davos' blade caught a mail link, glanced, slipped past, and nicked Osfried's cheek. Blood shone black in firelight. But more longboats closed. Weighted nets tangled the barge's rudder. The second and third barges tried turning upriver, only to collide and lock hulls. Within minutes, half their holds burned. The other half were claimed by sails who shouted Lannister cheers as they rolled sacks into commandeered craft. Davos' men cut lines and rowed for the shore amid arrows whickering overhead. Davos himself dove, boots dragging him into murk. He surfaced coughing, grasping a floating spar. Through stinging eyes he watched flames devour grain meant for the hungry. Each sack burst like a sodden dream, wheat streaming into the current. By dawn the destruction was rumor no longer. Smoke drifted up the river like a funeral shroud. In Flea Bottom, hungry mouths cursed Stannis for burning their hope. Atop the city walls, guards found graffiti scrawled in pitch. Stannis starves the children. Cersei's plan worked almost too well. Anger thickened the streets, spreading through ragpickers and apprentices, through midwives burdened with dead-eyed babes, through smiths whose forges cooled for lack of coin. The Queen's agents stoked fury by handing out copper stars, stamped with Joffrey's justice keeps the bread, though no bread arrived. Inside the Maegor's holdfast, Ned received word of Davos' failure. His eyes closed, lids trembling, but he neither cursed nor lamented. Instead, he summoned his daughters. Sansa came first, eyes swollen from tears shed for her lost betrothal dreams. Arya stalked behind, face smudged with dirt from secret sword practice. "You must return to Winterfell," Ned said. "Today," Sansa gasped. "But the wedding." "There may be no wedding, only war." Ned turned to Arya. "You will travel in silence, with trusted guards. Do not speak the truth of what you see until you reach your mother." Arya's voice was small but steady. "Will you come?" "When I can." Sansa sobbed. Arya bit her lip. Ned hugged them both. Later, he oversaw their escape by litter, disguised as merchant kin. It felt like tearing out two ribs to allow them flight. That evening, Tycho Nestoris was escorted to Ned's solar. Candles guttered low. The air smelled of wax smoke. Ned did not rise. "I need time," Ned said. "Time and wheat. Bravos profits when kingdoms stand. If King's Landing falls to riot, Stannis' victory will come at a cost that kills us all." "Then shall." Tycho studied Ned's drawn face. "What is it you propose?" "Loosen your blockade for 30 days. Allow Riverland's grain to pass. In return, I will persuade Robert's creditors in the Westerlands to meet you in council. We audit the debt together, purge falsified ledgers, cancel predatory penalties." Ned's steel eyes met Tycho's dark ones. "A kingdom of work, you said. Let's clear the fields first." Tycho clasped his gloved hands. "The bank does not forgive easily. Then think of it as pruning a tree to yield more fruit." Ned slid a parchment across the table. "Sign this memorandum. 30 days. The Iron Bank still collects interest, but lifts embargo on food." Tycho weighed the quill. "I have authority to negotiate. Yet if the royal household defaults again—" "Hold me accountable," Ned said. "I will stand surety with Winterfell's silver and my family's lives." At that, Tycho dipped the quill. In Casterly Rock, Lord Tywin traced reports of Tycho's concession with a gauntleted fingertip. Ravens had winged the news within a day. He scowled. "Stark courts the bank. Bold for a man who will soon lack a head if Cersei discovers his meddling." He looked up at Sir Kevin. "Summon 3,000 riders. We strike east before the harvest. If the Northmen think they can starve us out with Braavosi aid, let them watch their own fields burn." Kevin hesitated. "The Riverlords stand between. Hostilities could drag our banners deep into Tully lands." "Then let the Tullys drown," Tywin growled. "They sheltered that wolf's cub far too long." Gold glimmered in his eyes like coins catching sun. Across the castle-dotted valleys of the Riverlands, farmers felt dread settle heavier than any summer thunderhead. They had planted barley and turnips, trusting spring rains. But lines of Lannister spearmen marched along the roads now, torches ready. Squires whispered of Tywin's new battle plan. "Scorch fields, seize mills, leave the Starks destitute." Rumor made wheatheads tremble before fire touched them. At River Run, Catelyn Stark conferred with her brother Edmure, beneath the arched windows of the High Hall. "Father's illness grows," Catelyn said, voice taut. "Ned asks we prepare granaries for northern refugees if King's Landing falls." Edmure's fingers tapped the pommel of his sword. "Tywin Lannister's host gathers. If they cross the Red Fork, we'll need every grain sack for our own levies." Catelyn's gray eyes sharpened. "And if we do nothing, Winterfell starves come snow." A rattled breath. "I'll summon the bannermen," Edmure said finally. "But if the lion roars, fish and wolf must fight beside eagle and mountain goat. We cannot face Lannister alone." In the Vale of Arryn, young Lord Robin stared wide-eyed at the tapestry of his father's final tourney, where colors blurred like blood in water. "The Iron Bank wants our gold too?" he asked Lysa, who paced fretfully. "Not ours." Though letters from Tycho painted a different truth, the Vale owed 400,000 dragons for Arya's suppression of the Roberts' Rebellion. After years of quiet neglect, interest had doubled the sum. Maester Coleman suggested paying with silver mined in the Mountains of the Moon, but rebels harried every caravan. Lysa wrote desperate missives to her sister Catelyn and to Ned. There was talk of marrying Robin to a Braavosi merchant's daughter, an alliance that made her skin crawl, but coin was coin. And coin chose kings. Back in King's Landing, the 30-day reprieve spread hope through the gutters like a fragile dawn. Grain carts rumbled in, bearing sacks dusted white with chalk seals to attest proper weighing. To common folk, they shone brighter than any sunrise. Bread lines shortened, children chased crusts, bakers reopened shutters. Ned took to riding among them cloaked in plain wool, nodding to butchers who cheered the hand's name. Yet he felt time's sand slipping, 29 days, 28. Each dawn he counted anew. Circe watched the revival with mounting rage. He steals their hearts. She snapped to Grand Maester Tarley, Picel's replacement. Tarley, a stooped man with parchment skin, muttered soothing banalities. But Circe's mind sliced sharper. She summoned Sir Osfrid again. This Stark smuggled coin from the Vale. And bribes the small folk. Find proof. A note. A purse of Bravosi silver. Anything. Then arrest him for treason. Osfrid licked cracked lips. The hand commands many swords. Take more. She pressed a scroll bearing the royal seal. In Joffrey's name, any guard who resists will hang. On the 20th dawn of the reprieve, Ned attended council. Joffrey sprawled on a cushioned seat by the window, bored, flicking bits of bread at a caged thrush. Circe lounged at the table's head, gold and emerald gown shimmering. Varys and Tarley murmured near the fire. Only a handful of lords remained in the city. Most had joined their banners or fled uncertain tides. Tycho Nestoris entered unannounced. His dark attire bore raindrops like silver studwork. He bowed to Joffrey, then addressed Ned. The bank extends its audit invitation. Westerland factors have agreed to meet. Before Ned could reply, the doors banged open. Sir Osfrid strode in flanked by 6 red cloaks. He clutched a sack that clinked when he set it on the table. Bravosi silver, my queen. Seized from a peddler who confessed Lord Stark paid him to stir sedition. Nah. Ned's gaze flashed. That man was distributing barley loaves. Osfrid shrugged. With your coin, under royal law, bribery of small folk in time of crisis is treason. Cersei's smile gleamed. Lord Stark, surrender your sword. Tycho's brow furrowed. The bank's silver is not proof of sedition. We disperse funds for relief. Cersei ignored him. Arrest the traitor. Red cloaks advanced. Ned's fingers tightened on the hilt of ice. But he saw Joffrey's eyes glitter with cruel delight. He counted 6 guards plus Osfrid. Too many for a clean fight. And if he drew, Tycho might die in the crossfire. The bank's fragile goodwill shattered. Ned raised his hand slowly. I came to heal the realm. He turned to Tycho. Remember that. The red cloaks seized him, wrested ice away, and dragged him out into corridors echoing with the shrill laughter of a boy king. Within hours, ravens circled Dragonstone bearing dark news. Stannis read the letter by candlelight, jaw clenched. They brand the only honest man in that warren a traitor, he growled. Melisandre, robed in shadow and scarlet, watched the flames of a brazier dance across her coppery skin. The night is darkest before the dawn, she whispered. Lord Eddard's fall lights your path. The Iron Bank sails with you. The flames show a stag crowned in fire. Stannis' blue eyes spark. Then we sail by fortnight's end. Davos will steer the flagship. But Davos had not yet returned. Word reached Dragonstone of his capture while trying to re-enter the harbor. He languished now in the dungeons of the Red Keep. Stannis ground his teeth. Iron Bank or no, I will break those gates. The dungeon smelled of mold and rancid straw. Ned sat shackled beside Davos in a cramped cell gated by black iron. Water dripped like metronomic despair. Yet Ned found solace in conversation. They spoke of families, of Bran's archery, of Davos' sons fishing off Cape Wrath, until heavy footsteps paused outside and a candle flared. Tycho appeared, escorted by a single Bravosi guard who remained in the torchlit hall. The banker's expression was unreadable. "I warned you," Ned said quietly. "You dealt with vipers." "Vipers may yield venom or antivenom," Tycho replied. He knelt, producing a small brass key. "The bank cannot interfere in your politics, yet it despises broken contracts more than prison bars." The key scraped in the lock. Chains slithered free. "There is a ship at the mud gate under black sail," Tycho continued. "Go north. Rally those who still honor credit and crown." Ned's brow furrowed. "And leave King's Landing to wolves and lions?" "For now," Tycho said. "When two dogs fight, sometimes the bone must roll away. Retrieve it later, intact." "And now?" Ned hesitated, honor warring with strategy. Davos whispered, "Your daughters, my lord. Think of Winterfell." Ned bowed his head. Then he clasped Tycho's forearm. "I will repay this debt." "The bank expects no less," Tycho said, and vanished like a shadow swallowed by deeper dark. Under storm-tattered clouds, Ned and Davos emerged through a postern to find narrowboats moored at the quay. Bravosi sailors ushered them aboard. Tides carried the vessel out on a moonless swell. Ned watched the city fade, its walls torch-ringed against the night like embers on a dying hearth. Somewhere within those walls, Cersei sharpened knives, and Joffrey played at rulership with bloodied toys. Davos joined him at the rail. "The tide pulls hard," he said. "If we push sail, we might reach White Harbor in 4 days. And Winterfell in 2 weeks more." Ned gripped the gunwale. "If Tywin marches, we must answer quickly." Davos nodded. "Stannis will sail soon. The Iron Bank bets on him, yet they freed us too." "Perhaps they hedge," Ned mused. "Or perhaps they hope honor still has credit in men's hearts." Seabirds cried overhead like restless spirits as the ship heeled northward. In the capital, Osfred's men discovered Ned's empty cell by dawn. Panic rippled upward. Cersei slapped Osfred hard enough to draw blood. "Find him," she hissed. "The realm must see Stark's head on a spike." But rumors had already flown. Some claimed Stark escaped with Tycho's aid. Others swore he melted through stone like a wizard of old Valyria. Small folk debated his innocence anew, emboldened by bread in their bellies and outrage in their souls. Streets filled with chants, "The wolf lives, the lion lies." Gold cloaks cracked heads, but each broken skull birthed 2 fresh voices. Varys watched from a lattice window in the Tower of the Hand. He sighed. "Chaos is a ladder," Pettier had once said. "But ladders fall too when too many climb at once." He considered his webs and found many threads gone slack. Time to spin anew. He penned a letter to Stannis. "The lioness grows desperate. The cub claws a throne made of debt. Strike swift and the realm survives. Delay and it dies." Then he penned another to Robb Stark, newly come of age at Winterfell. "Your father rides for you. The Lannisters ride as well. Steel your heart and sharpen your sword." He sealed both with wax, stamped of a 7-pointed star. Neutral, pious, unprovable. That night, as ravens winged north and east, Varys retired to his secret tunnels. He carried a small purse of diamonds, payment from Tycho for facilitating a jailbreak. Coordinate. But diamonds meant nothing to him. Only peace did. He whispered a prayer to whatever god still listened, then snuffed his candle and vanished into dark. 30 days after Tycho's reprieve began, the Iron Bank's patience ran out. Bravosi galleys hoisted crimson pennants, signifying default. Their captains turned north to join Stannis' fleet. From every free city, sellsword companies set sail. The gallant men of Lys, the Company of the Cat, the Stormcrows, newly expelled from Slaver's Bay, and a dozen lesser bands. Each bore contracts sealed by black iron and silver coin. They converged on Dragonstone like iron filings to a lodestone. Stannis inspected them with stern eyes, discarding any commander who quibbled at discipline. He ordered every oarsman paid fortnightly in bank-stamped coins. Sellsword loyalty was purchased, but it was polished by respect. Stannis would bind both. On a windy dawn, his banners unfurled, crowned stag within a fiery heart. 60 warships spread canvas and angled oars, prows cutting deep green water as gulls shrieked overhead. Davos, returned by chance of storms to Dragonstone, stood at the flagship's helm. Beside him, Melisandre murmured chants to Rhaelor. Though Stannis permitted no human sacrifice aboard, only oil-soaked effigies burned to light the fleet's prows. South winds filled sails, carrying them toward King's Landing. Far to the north, Ned crossed the neck beneath willows dripping with ghost-white moss. Haig's ferry carried him over the Green Fork, where reeds whispered of hidden crannogmen who watched, unseen. At Moat Cailin, he met Sir Roderick Castle with 100 picked men, old friends whose beards bristled with relief. They rode north together, hearts heavy but hopeful. Robb rode out from Winterfell to greet them, lean and tall, his red-brown hair whipped by autumn wind. "Father," he breathed, dismounting. They embraced. Ned felt his son's ribs, the tautness of new manhood forged by burden. Bran, still healing, beamed from atop a garron. Rickon clung to his nurse, waving a pine cone like a scepter. Ned's eyes burned. Inside Winterfell's great hall, they called a council. Maester Luwin spread maps. Tywin's host had torched fields along the Red Fork, driving refugees north. Walder Frey refused passage across the Twins without extraordinary price. Riverlords rallied, but outnumbered they could bleed out before winter. Worse, rumors spoke of a second Lannister column aimed at Seaguard. If it fell, Ironmen might raid the coast unhindered. Robb's knuckles whitened on the table. "We must march to River Run, and leave the north undefended." Greatjon Umber thundered. "We'll not trade our hearths for river mud." Then Ned spoke, voice calm but ironbound. "We ride a two-edged horse. Abandon our liege lords and lose honor. Abandon our homes and lose children. We must do both, and neither." He paced. "Lord Umber, you and Karstark hold the neck. Dig trenches, fell trees, flood lowlands. Harass any host that tries crossing. I will ride south with Robb and half our strength. We relieve River Run, then swing east to threaten Casterly Rock's flank. Tywin will turn home or risk his seat." "Done?" Torches flickered on wolf heads carved into hall beams. Murmurs rose, then roars of assent. "Make your peace with the gods," Ned finished. "We ride in 3 days." In King's Landing, Cersei's iron grip slipped. Grain again dwindled. The 30 days bought by Ned yielded only brief respite before Tywin's scorched earth cut off new supply. Gold cloaks patrolled in gangs, but half their number deserted for want of pay. Riots flared near the Dragon Pit. Shops burned along the Street of Silk. When a baker's boy hurled a stone that struck Joffrey's litter, the king ordered every boy within sight hanged. The mob erupted. Joffrey escaped, but 60 gold cloaks died defending him. Bodies dangled from sept spires like grotesque ornaments. Crows swarmed. Amid chaos, the Iron Bank's final writ arrived. It cited breach of agreement, unlawful seizure of grain, unlawful imprisonment of bank envoys, and threats against reserved collateral. Assets in Westeros held by Lannister or Crown were hereby subject to seizure by any third party acting under Braavosi letters of marque. In simpler terms, piracy was legalized, so long as the target wore a crown stag or red lion. Ships under neutral colors descended on the capital's port like vultures. One by one, the royal fleet's surviving cogs slipped away under cover of fog, captains preferring piracy to pierside lynching. Trade ground to a halt. Famine pressed close again, sharper than before. Cersei screamed at the small council until her throat bled. Grand Maester Tarla died suddenly. Poison, some whispered. Varys vanished. Even Osfryd began to fear leaving his chambers. When word reached the city that Stannis' fleet sailed, panic became delirium. The Blackwater Bay shone like hammered bronze beneath a pall of cloud as Stannis warships rounded the headland. King's Landing's walls bristled with ballistae, but half lacked quarrels. The other half lacked trained crew. Cersei stood atop Maegor's holdfast, gripping the parapet, knuckles white. Joffrey hid behind her skirts, whimpering at the sight of so many sails. "If we had wildfire," he croaked, "we'd burn them." "Silence," Cersei muttered. Her gaze hunted for gold banners. Tywins promised reinforcements, but none crowned the western road. Only dust. Davos guided Stannis' ship inside bowshot before dropping anchor. Trumpets blared. A white pennant rose. Parley, Dor. Cersei's council begged her to ignore it. Fear made them blind. But refusal risked the city's immediate assault. She granted audience atop the Gate of the Gods. Stannis rode ashore, flanked by ranks of Braavosi Marines in sea-green mail. He mounted stone steps, boots ringing. His eyes, cold and blue, met hers with no flicker. "Surrender," he said. "The Iron Bank will honor all debts once a lawful king rules." Cersei laughed, raw and ragged. "You? Lawful? You could not sit a privy stool without a banker's permission." "I need not sit comfortably," Stannis murmured. Then louder, "Release the small folk from your quarrels, open the gates, and swear fealty. Your son will live in exile at Casterly Rock. You at the Silent Sisters. The crown's debt will be restructured." Joffrey shrieked. "Kill him." Arrows hissed. 2 Braavosi Marines fell. Stannis did not flinch. Instead, he raised a gauntleted fist. From the bay, signal torches flamed. Braavosi bombards boomed. Great iron tubes hurling stone shot that smashed battlement walk. One tower collapsed in a geyser of dust. Screams rose like steam. The crowd of onlookers scattered in terror. Cersei dragged Joffrey back inside the gatehouse. Her voice shredded. "Murder him, burn them all." But wildfire stores lay nearly empty. Alchemists had sold secret caches as collateral to Taroshi smugglers weeks earlier. Hope guttered. That night, storm clouds burst. Lightning illuminated Stannis' siege lines. Lines of Mantari scorpions, Myrish trebuchets, rows of sellswords bristling beneath lightning-whipped banners. Thunder disguised the crash of falling granite. Fires flickered along the north wall, where quarrels kindled pitch cauldrons, but rain quenched them. Still, the assault pressed like a ratchet, click by inexorable click. Inside, food bins held only dust. Gold cloaks fought bread riots in the fish market, slaying dozens before the mob overwhelmed them. Half the remaining city guard deserted to Stannis' lines under promise of coin. Desperation birthed boldness. Cersei dispatched ravens to Tywin. "March or all is lost." But Tywin's host lay snarled by northern cavalry harrying its flank. He would not arrive soon, if at all. On the 5th night of siege, faint horns drifted over the rain. Horns of the north. Ned and Robb's host marched from the King's Road, flanked by Tully banners and Arryn falcons. They had outmaneuvered the Lannister column, crossing the Trident at Oldstones with Crannogmen guides, then sweeping south, under cover of mist. Now they approached King's Landing, not as saviors of crown or stag, but as arbitrators of realm. Stannis received Ned in a tattered command tent that smelled of damp canvas and oil. Robb waited outside among veteran guards. Rain drummed overhead. "You escaped their dungeons," Stannis said. "Chance and Braavosi keys," Ned replied, shrugging out of a sodden cloak. "I come seeking peace. The realm bleeds from 10,000 rents. We must stitch them." Stannis' jaw tightened. "Submit the city and the bank's debt is mine. Tywin's treachery ends at sword's edge." "Then Tywin's." "Tywin's host retreats west," Ned reported. "They cannot break our combined strength. But sack this city, and you invite a generation's hate, and the faith's wrath." Stannis tapped the map. "The small folk starve. That is Cersei's doing. And ours, if we press siege another week." Ned's voice dropped. "Let the bank's coin feed them, not fuel Sellsword's greed. Offer clemency for any gold cloak who opens the gates." Stannis studied him. "You counsel mercy more than strategy. Mercy is strategy when the bank holds your purse. Destroy King's Landing, and you inherit rubble. Spare it, and you inherit industry." "Menawine." Stannis exhaled. "Very well, Don Parley, final terms. If Cersei refuses, then we strike," Ned finished gravely. Dawn rose pale and tattered. A single horn blast echoed across the mudblin. Gates groaned ajar. A procession emerged. Varys at its head, robes mud-spattered, hands raised. Behind him, shuffled small folk carrying a banner improvised from torn linens, a white direwolf and red stag bound beneath a crown of grain stalks. Last came Circe, hair unbound, golden locks plastered by rain across a face once beautiful, now gaunt. She knelt before Stannis and Ned. Silence pooled. "I yield," she whispered. "Spare my son." Stannis' eyes flicked toward Joffrey, dragged in chains, lips split. He considered, then spoke. "The boy will take the black. Live his life as a brother of the Night's Watch." Cersei's shoulders shook. Ned watched the queen who had tormented him crumple like parchment in wet hands. He felt no triumph, only a hollow relief. Tycho Nestoris stepped forward from a cluster of Braavosi factors. Rain glimmered on his cloak like frost on stone. He unrolled a crimson-sealed scroll. "By authority of the Iron Bank, this contract transfers the crown's debt to His Grace Stannis of House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men." He handed a quill to Stannis. Stannis hesitated, glancing at Ned. Ned inclined his head. With a deliberate stroke, Stannis signed. "The bank acknowledges," Tycho said. "All interest begins anew, as of this day, at rates commensurate with wartime risk. First payment due on midwinter solstice." Stannis gave a curt nod, then turned to his men. "Secure the gates. Feed the city. Post notice. Grain for labor, bread for children, no tithes for 60 days. Cheer rippled through the soaked lines. Gold cloaks laid down arms. Small folk wept openly. From the walls, bells tolled, first hesitantly, then in rising peals loud enough to drown retreating thunder. Ned Stark mounted the battlements beside Davos. Together they looked upon a city battered but unbroken, its smoke rising straight at last. "Is it over?" Davos asked. "For a time." Ned's gaze drifted beyond rooftops to the northern road. "Debts linger. Tywin remains. The Iron Bank will collect, but today there is bread." Below, carts trundled through opened gates bearing sacks, stamped with Braavosi vaults. Children chased them like swallows after summer insects. Somewhere, a washerwoman began to sing, a cracked tune about spring rain and green shoots. Others joined in until the whole square thrummed with fragile, improbable joy. Tycho listened, expression unreadable. Gold and silver weighed heavy in his chests, but his eyes rested on singing mouths. Perhaps even a banker could learn profit in song. Night fell calm for the first time in moons. Fires burned only in hearths. Swords rested sheathed. Ned sat alone on a tower balcony, quill-scratching parchment. He wrote to Winterfell. "We are safe, for now. Feed the grain stores. Winter will still come, but perhaps we will meet it together." He paused, staring across the bay where Braavosi lanterns bobbed like distant stars. He thought of Robert, of boar tusks and hollow crowns, of Circe kneeling in mud, of Stannis with signature fresh as blood. Kings rose and fell, but debts and honor endured. Ned set quill aside. Somewhere below, the Iron Bank's clerks balanced ledgers by lamplight. Yet above, beyond their sums, constellations wheeled, ancient, steadfast. He took comfort in that sky, empty of debt or crown, promising a dawn beyond reckoning. And for the first time in a long while, Eddard Stark allowed himself to hope. The hunched silhouette of a one-masted cog heaved through the surf at the mouth of the Mander, half its ratlines torn and flapping like sea-worn pennants. Dawn bruised the sky in streaks of violet, and on the quarterdeck Captain Oliver Hill paced beneath a tar-stained pennant that should have flown Lannister crimson. But the lion was gone. Hacked away by mutineers outside Fair Isle, and replaced by a square of faded gray cloth painted with the Iron Bank's vault sigil. In the holds below, bolts of arbor wool lay stacked beside kegs of salt beef. All royal stores seized from Casterly Rock's merchants under Braavosi letters of marque. When they made fast at Bitterbridge, Hill's barefoot sailors swarmed the quay, trading japes in half a dozen tongues. Watching them from the crenellations stood Sir Loras Tyrell, gleaming in polished emerald armor. The lotus sigil of House Tyrell shone bright upon his breast, Yet his face bore none of its bloom. The siege of Brightwater Keep, the flight from King's Landing, and Renly's uncertain temper had etched fresh lines around those young eyes. Renly Baratheon emerged behind him, rain-dark hair lifted by spring breeze. He smiled as the sailors unloaded bales. "Our Braavosi friends are most obliging," he murmured. "Stannis thinks the bank his alone. But Coin speaks every language, and it says my claim glitters brighter than his." Loras's gauntlet ticked upon the stone. "Stannis now styles himself king in fact as well as name. The city's walls are his. Your brother's hand sits at his side. The small folk sing for them." "Small folk sing for bread," Renly countered. "And Highgarden will feed them. Wait until they taste honeyed oat cakes and sweet red apples again, delivered by a king who smiles." The easy charm faltered only a heartbeat. "Besides, I have 12,000 fresh spears and the confidence of the Reach. Stannis has a bankrupt throne and the stench of siege upon him." Yet even as Renly spoke, ravens winged west, carrying darker tidings. Tywin's scorched advance had stalled at the Tumblestone, but the old lord was not idle. At Ashmark, envoys from the Iron Islands met him beneath the flayed banners of House Marbrand. Whispers soon told of gold offered for salt iron teeth. And in the dread halls of Harrenhal, Roose Bolton hosted Lannister captains with cool reserve, listening to boasts of a northern campaign, while his silent men weighed the odds behind pale eyes. Stannis Baratheon did not trust quiet. To him, silence smelt of plotting, the unseen rot behind a fair-seeming beam. So when peace descended on King's Landing, when bread flowed, when gold cloaks drilled without riot, when the bells tolled only for matins, she heard in every lull the wheat of distant blades. The small council convened beneath the patched-up ceiling of the Tower of the Hand, rain stains darkening the joists where wildfire shot had shattered stone. Davos Seaworth, lean from imprisonment but unbowed, stood guard at Stannis' right. Ned Stark sat opposite, brow creased, parchment in hand. "Tyrell riders crossed the Mandarin force," Davos reported. 20,000 foot, perhaps more. "And why march they here?" Stannis demanded, knuckles pale on the table's edge. "They swore truce when I spared the city." Ned's gray gaze met Davos. "A Tyrell always blooms toward sun and coin. Renly and Lord Mace think both shine from Highgarden's coffers." He pushed a fresh raven scroll across the boards. "But there is graver news. Word from my wife. Bolton and Frey have broken faith. They call banners under the lion." A hush, brittle as frost. Stannis inhaled sharply. "Bolton's scythes reap more than wheat. If he marches on the neck, your northern levies will be cut from retreat." "Which is why I ride in the morning," Ned said. "Robb holds River Run, yet Tywin girds for another assault. We must break the lion before the flayed man bears his knives." Davos frowned at the map. 3 fronts, Renly south, Tywin west, Bolton north. "We cannot meet all." "Then we divide," Stannis said. "Davos, you will command the garrison. I sail at once to Storm's End, reclaim my seat and secure grain. Lord Stark marches west. The city must hold or all fails." Ned's jaw set. "And the bank? Tycho counts every groat we spend." "Let him," Stannis growled. Ink dries. Swords draw. Tycho Nestoris, however, cared little for steel so long as ledgers balanced. He moved through debased chambers of the exchequer like a patient surgeon, cutting false tallies, draining corruption. Where Littlefinger's scribbles once coiled like worms, Tycho's neat sums marched in iron columns. Taxes owed, tithes forgiven, debts consolidated. In a week, he shaved 500,000 dragons from interest, simply by voiding embezzled warrants. A flourish of quill worth a field of corpses. Yet each night, alone in his borrowed solar, he unfolded a secret parchment, sealed not with a vault, but with a crimson sunburst, the sigil of Myr. It bore Renly's promise, 2 points interest above crown rate, monopoly on Reach wine imports for a decade, if the bank would facilitate the swift resolution of the succession dispute. Takeo read it often, weighing profit against precedent. To back a second claimant, after staking, Stannis was risk. But risk sometimes paid double. He penned no reply. Yet. North of River Run, Robb Stark rode beneath banners, snapping wet in late afternoon gusts. Mud spattered silver trout and gray direwolf alike. The tumbling river beside the column ran high with meltwater. Scouts reported Tywin had split his host. 16,000, marching toward Pink Maiden, 12 hastening for the Golden Tooth. Robb's own force, reinforced by Mallister and Blackwood, numbered but 19. At dusk, in a copse of elm, Robb gathered his captains. Great John Umber stomped beside the fire, flames dancing in his beard. Come dawn, we smash their vanguard at the ridge, take Lord Tydosa's head, and send it to the rock. Roose Bolton's voice drifted cool as evening mist. If we strike the smaller column, Tywin falls back, draws us deep. Better to bleed his baggage than fade. Wolves harry, lions starve. Dino. Catelyn, wrapped in a sable cloak, listened in silence until Robb turned to her. Mother. Strike hard. She answered, meeting her son's eyes. But hold something in reserve. Lions cornered thrash wildly. Robb nodded, mind working. Very well. Sir Brynden sweeps east with light horse, raid the wagons. Lord Bolton shadows Tywin's knights. The main host will meet them at Seven Streams. He turned to Great John. Ready the men to march by moonset. We ride under fog. As the council dispersed, Catelyn lingered with Bolton. You counsel caution, she said softly. Yet your raven flew late to River Run. Bolton tilted his head. Torchlight glimmered on pale eyes. Wars breed delays, my lady. Ravens fear hawks. She watched him merge with shadows, uneasy. Far to the south, Storm's End rose from the quaking sea like a giant's fist. Its ringed walls had never fallen to siege nor storm, but inside its massive granaries rats nested. There had been no garrison in months. Stannis ships anchored under moonlight without contest. At dawn he strode ashore, mail jingling, boots crunching barnacle-rhymed steps. Sir Penrose, castellan left by Renly, opened the gates after brief parley. Stannis promised safe conduct to Highgarden servants and fair wages to garrison men. Few refused. In the echoing hall, where Baratheon stags leapt across soot-black banners, Stannis knelt a moment at the carved table marking Stormland's castles. Memory flickered, Robert laughing, swinging a wooden sword, Renly toddling after, sticky with honey. He rose, visage hard. Feed the townsfolk, he ordered. Open stores. Any man too weak to fight may yet fish. To Melisandre, who drifted behind him like a red shadow, he said only, Pray if you must, but blood sacrifices win no hearts here. She inclined her head, ruby gleaming, though her eyes burned with unshed flame. That night, he wrote orders to every Stormlander lord still sitting walls or hiding in green hills. Come, or be marked rebel. He sealed each with black wax. The next tide carried ravens outward, like iron-feathered judgment. In King's Landing, moonlight silvered cracked tiles of the great sept. Inside, Queen Regent Cersei knelt before the mother's statue attended by two silent sisters. She had lost her crown, her father's armies, her son, and yet her hatred burned undimmed. From hidden pockets in her mourning gown, she produced 3 slim jars of wildfire stolen months earlier, and buried beneath sept flooring. 7 grant me vengeance, she whispered, though her gaze lingered on the green-tinged liquid rather than marble faces above. Outside, chants rose, penitents praising the new king, cursing Lannister deceit. She imagined their throats sealing with smoke. Before dawn, she bribed a sexton to load the jars onto a hay cart bound for Flea Bottom. The blast destroyed 2 taverns and a poorhouse, killing dozens and setting rumor ablaze. Stannis alchemists testing new weapons on the innocent. Bread lines turned angry again. Gold cloaks quelled the riot. but each lash cracked against Circe's own legend, invisible yet deep. Varys, resurfacing in the confusion, whispered the truth of wildfire to Davos. Within a day, Circe found herself manacled in the dungeons she had emptied of Ned. She raged at betrayal, but none listened. Joffrey, cloistered in the sept cells preparing for his march to the wall, heard her screams and curled into his straw pallet, teeth chattering. While the capital trembled, Tywin at last faced Robb Stark among the ridges of Seven Streams. Fog clung so thick that riders vanished 10 paces off. Drums pulsed like distant thunder. Robb kept his main host cowled in the gray mire, until hornblasts signaled Brynden Blackfish had seized the baggage train. Then direwolf banners surged from the vapor, crashing against disordered Lannister lines. The ground turned slick with churned clay. Arrows hissed unseen. Greyjohn shattered the left flank with a wedge of Umber axemen. Sir Kevan rallied a stand beneath a chestnut hill, but the hill erupted in roaring flame. Northerners had soaked brush in lamp oil before dawn. By noon, the field belonged to the wolf. Tywin escaped only by hurling household knights into the breach, while he rode hard west. He lost 2,000 spears, every supply wagon, and most damning, a gilded coffer containing correspondence with Balon Greyjoy. In Robb's hands, the letters proved Ironborn collusion in exchange for license to raid the north. Yet Bolton and Frey were not named. Their treacheries remained veiled. Night found Robb among the dead, cloak spattered red. He offered his men no speech, only a nod of grim thanks. Catelyn wept when a standard-bearer laid Lord Blackwood's broken body at her feet. Victory tasted of ash. Bolton presented a tally. "We captured 400 knights," he said, calm. "I have placed them under heavy guard." "Treat them well," Robb answered. "They are ransom." Bolton's thin lips curved almost to a smile. "As you command." Later, by torchlight, Catelyn saw riders bearing crimson cloaks slip from Bolton's camp toward the west. She told Robb, but dawn found no trace. Bolton's men claimed the prisoners escaped in fog. Robb ordered pursuit, yet the knights vanished like ghosts. The Reach's banners bloomed north of Bitterbridge, a garden reshaped to an army. Bright rose and golden lily rippled beside the crowned stag of Renly. Marjorie Tyrell rode at her brother's side, diaphanous veil trailing from an emerald helm. Rumors already painted her queen-to-be. Lords Rowan, Tarly, and Caswell marched behind, cornucopias of men and grain. On the banks of the Blueburn, Renly summoned his vassals to a great feast. Hogs turning on spits, musicians strumming high summer lays. When cups were raised, Renly spoke with honeyed ease. "My brother Stannis sits restless on an iron seat, hammered from debts and old swords. The realm needs laughter again, not iron." He lifted a golden goblet. "Ride with me and watch the roses climb those black walls until every child smells summer once more." Cheers thundered, yet in one corner, Sir Randall Tarly leaned to Lord Rowan. "Flowers wilt in winter, and winter comes." His eyes strayed to far hills, where frost already dusted distant heights, earlier than any living man recalled. At River Run, a white raven arrived, an omen, not from the citadel, but from Maester Aemon at Castle Black. "Winter," he warned, gathered beyond the wall. Wildlings massed, pale shapes walked in ancient woods. The southern kingdoms bickered while death sharpened claws on ice. Catelyn shared the letter with Robb and Maester Luwin, newly arrived from Winterfell. Luwin's voice trembled. "If the Night's Watch falls, all our quarrels are but sparks on snow." Robb stared long at the candle flame, disrupting draft-cold shadows. "Then we end this war quickly. One more strike to break Lannister power, then home." He tapped the captured coffer. "The Greyjoy letters can turn the tide. If we send them to Lord Hoster, Rivermen will rally every sail against Pike. Tywin will stand alone." "Done?" But Bolton, leaning in gloom near the door, murmured, "Beware corners cats run to and cornered." His eyes glittered like wet stone. Robb nodded, believing he understood. That night, in Bolton's tent, red candles guttered over parchment scraped thin. A raven waited, bearing a different message, inked in Bolton's meticulous hand. "To Lord Tywin, the wolf is strong yet blind. Flay him at my word, and the north will bleed into your coffers." He sealed it with pink wax impressed by a flayed man. Dawn mist swallowed the bird's flight. South again. Stannis drilled new levees outside Storm's End's curtain walls. They swung practice blades while wind from Shipbreaker Bay keened over battlements. Melisandre watched, eyelids half closed, seeing shapes and steam from her lips. At dusk, she approached Stannis, who pored over a sheaf of captured Tyrell grain warrants. "Your foes gather," she said, "but the fires gift a path." "No more paths of flame," Stannis answered, tired. "Faith earned me this castle, not pyres." She touched his mailed arm. "Faith is fire. Without heat, metal grows brittle." Her ruby pulsed faint heartbeat light. Later alone. Stannis recalled Renly's death under the fiery shadow. That night, he dreamt of a stag wreathed in crimson flame devouring a rose. He woke before dawn. Sweating. In King's Landing, Tycho convened a conclave in the repaired throne room, vaulted heights echoing where hammers still rang. Representatives of the faith, the guilds, and foreign envoys gathered. Ned, newly returned from the Western victory, stood beside the Iron Throne's foot, arms folded. Tycho addressed them. "The Crown's debt obligations require a comprehensive revenue act. The Iron Bank proposes mint reform, pegging the gold dragon to Braavosi scales, tariff standardization on Dornish wine and Myrish lace, and a modest hearth tax." Murmuring rose. The guildmasters balked at tariffs. Septons decried hearth taxes on peasants. Dornish envoy Miria Jordain objected to wine duties. Ned raised a hand. "I accept the mint reform. Our coin is clipped beyond trust. Tariffs may fund roads and armies to fight the winter Aemon warns of, but hearth taxes will chill poor folk beyond forbearance." "Then chow." Tycho inclined his head. "Then propose alternatives." Ned drew breath. "We will seize lands proven bought by Lannister extortion, redistribute them to loyal tenants, levy a crop tithe for 5 years. The harvest feeds both treasury and people." Gasps. "Dado." Land Zizura was near sacrilege to Westerosi lords. Yet guildsfolk nodded, even Septon faces softened. Tycho tapped quill against palm. An intriguing instrument. The bank could underwrite administration for a fee. Now. Thus a fragile fiscal pact emerged, coined to brace the realm against winter. But far crafts noisier than quills prepared to shear balance sheets in steel. Autumn's last day saw Renly's host encamped atop the rolling meadows of King's Wood, barely 15 leagues south of the capital. Dawn mist wreathed tents in rose gold. Scouts galloped in, muddy and wild-eyed. "Fleet on the Blackwater," they cried. Stag banners, Braavosi pennants. 10, 20, perhaps 30 galleys. Stannis returns. Renly thrilled. Perfect. Brother meets brother before the walls. Let the city decide whose crown fits. But Margaery's lips thinned. "Walls hold famine and plague, love. We should not gift them battle's ruin, too." A horn blast interrupted. Riders from the north spur of the wood, Tyrell outriders, fleeing with arrows sprouting shafts bright crimson. Behind them charged mailed figures beneath the flayed man of Bolton. Chaos ripped the meadow. Bolton's cavalry slammed the Tyrell left, severing command tents. Frey banners emerged in the rear, sowing panic. Renly's greencloaks rallied, but the surprise tore cohesion. Loras cut his way toward Renly, shouting for order. At the same moment, sails under Kraken sigils rounded the mouth of the Blackwater. Victorian Greyjoy's longships, bartered into war by Tywin's gold. They set upon Stannis' vanguard, grapnels biting hulls, axes hacking oars. Firepots burst, masts toppled. The river became a cauldron of shrieking iron. From the city walls, Ned watched both disasters converge. Bolton treachery in the field, Greyjoy treachery on the water. Horror chilled him, but battle sense sparked. He turned to Davos. "Sound the bells, open the gates. Host the wounded, ready reserve spears." Davos' brows rose. Let strangers inside. Better strangers than slaughter, Ned snapped. If we save them, they may fight for us tomorrow. Bells clanged frantically. Gates yawned. As Renly's routed soldiers streamed toward refuge, the small folk parted, uncertain. Northmen at the gate tossed fresh loaves to fleeing Tyrell men. Suspicion melted into desperate gratitude. Inside the Red Keep, Tycho watched refugees flood streets. His quill paused. War upended ledgers, but also minted opportunity. He strode from his desk. Downriver, the fight raged filthy and grand. Davos steered a battered cog loaded with archers, weaving between longships where kraken boards clashed with fiery heart shields. He saw Salador Sand's flagship grapple two ironborn hulks at once, saw the Lysini sellsword laughing as he tossed lit jars from yardarm to deck. Green fire blossomed. Hungry and cold. Screams rang. Across black water, Stannis' gaze burned brighter than any flame. He had transferred to a Drummond after his first flagship fell. Now he stood atop the forecastle, cloak ragged, sword lifted. Push, he roared, and oars bit deep. Ahead, Victarion's Iron Victory loomed, hull studded with beaks. The impact thundered. Both ships cracked, limbs of oak and flesh flung skyward. Stannis leapt the rail, landing amid ironborn, stunned by shock. His blade rose, fell, rose again. Fierce, relentless. He gained the quarterdeck, cut down a helmsman, and faced Victarion gray to gray. Axes rang, sparks showered. The deck bucked as hulls tore apart. A stray crossbow quarrel graced Stannis' cheek, a red line of pain. Victarion bellowed, swung two-handed. Stannis ducked, thrust low, hamstrung the Kraken lord. When Victarion dropped to one knee, Stannis pressed his brow to his foes. The crown belongs to those who pay their debts, he rasped, then drove steel through gorget. Iron Victory shuddered. Flames licked the rigging. Stannis signaled, was hauled by rope back to a waiting galley as the ironborn flagship sank. At sunset, torn banners drifted upon crimson mirrored water. The ironborn fled, many ships aflame. Stannis' fleet, half ruined, limped upriver towing battered prizes, but victorious. Gulls wheeled above corpses, bobbing like sodden driftwood. On the King's Road south of the city, Bolton's surprise charge broke upon Tyrell spears after the first shock. Loras rallied his brother Garland's reserves. Bright rose met bleached, flayed hide. For an hour the meadow ran scarlet, petals and skin indistinguishable in churned mud. Renly himself led a counter-thrust that split fray ranks. Yet Bolton's purpose was never to win, only to wound, to bleed Renly's strength before lions struck. When golden armor glinted on the western ridge, Renly's heart seized. Sir Adam Marbrand swept down with 3,000 Lannister knights, the remnant of Tywin's battered westerners. But enough. Reserve lines buckled. Margaery's escort whisked her from the field as Renly carved a path toward safety. Behind him, chaos devoured order. Banners toppled, commanders fell. By nightfall, the Reach host broke apart, scattering east and south. Renly escaped with a handful to Tarth's waiting ships. Bolton melted into gathering dark, losses light, intent fulfilled. He sent fresh riders north, the Rosebleeds. The Wolf next. Ned Stark stood upon the gate of the gods when battered Stannis trod across the drawbridge. Armor dented, dark eyes fierce. Refugees crowded the square. Reach men, Braavosi Marines, small folk clutching children. Fires crackled in braziers. The air smelled of smoke and salted blood. Ned descended stone steps to meet the king. They clasped forearms. Words failed them a moment, for weariness weighed heavier than victory. Renly? Stannis asked. Beaten, not slain, Ned answered. Bolton turned cloak, Freys beside, Tyrell remnant shelters within. Stannis' features hardened. Bolton will answer by fire and steel. And winter, Ned murmured. Our true foe approaches. They climbed the rampart. In the west, Embers of sunset smoldered behind distant ridges. Between those hills and King's Landing, campfires flickered. Wolf banners on one side, lion on the other, uncertain which flame burned brighter. Tycho joined them, cloak snapping. "The bank laments costly days," he said lightly, "yet sees in them prospects. Peace can yield interest exceeding war, if principled men agree to sign." Stannis glanced at Ned. "Principled men," he repeated. "And how many principled men remain?" Ned's reply was quiet, resolute. "Enough." Behind them, bells tolled again, but not for battle. They rang to summon the faith and guilds to the square, where Davos prepared tables laden with soup, meat and fresh bread from new grain. Tonight, hungry foes would feed side by side, if only to spare strength for tomorrow. Ned listened to the pealing bells. In Winterfell's Godswood, such sound carried different meaning, but here it signaled hope wrought from ruin. He thought of Sansa safe at White Harbor, of Arya roaming woods with Nymeria in forgotten freedom, of Bran upright on summer grass in dreams. He breathed deep. Below, men stumbled from benches to help rivals stand. A Braavosi clerk bound a Tyrell archer's gashed hand. A Northman shared ale with a sellsword from lice. Small gestures, but seeds sprout in feather-thin cracks. Even Tycho seemed moved, though his expression remained austere. "Unity," he said as if tasting a foreign dish. Stannis' voice rumbled. "Unity forged in debt and danger. We shall see if it holds." "Then?" Ned laid a hand on the parapet's cold stone. "It must," he whispered, as the first snowflake of winter drifted from a starless sky and dissolved upon the Iron Throne's blade-forged shadow. Flurries veiled King's Landing in a ghostly hush that muted even the harbor's ceaseless clank of rigging and gull cry. The snow fell fine as sifted flour at first, dusting the spires of the great sept and the blood-slick cobbles where Sellswords had fought and died only days before. Then thicker flakes drifted down, feathering battlements, frosting the rusted hinges of the city gates, settling in the axe scars of siege towers, still parked like slumped giants outside the walls. For most of the capital's inhabitants, it was the first true snow they had ever seen. Many stared upward in uneasy wonder. Others knelt to scoop a handful as though to test if it were unreal. Children tried to pack snow into balls but found the powder too dry, the air too cold. The snows of the far north had come south at last, and in their silence every soul heard a warning older than kingdoms: winter walks. Within the red keep the chill crept through mortar joints and seeped beneath heavy doors. Iron braziers burned day and night in the small hall, yet their glow seemed small beside the spreading frost. Ned Stark moved among the hearths. Sleeves rolled, helping scullery boys heave in fresh beech logs. He felt the snows bite in his beard and bones, but to him it carried a smell of home. Pine pitch, hoarfrost on stone, the hush of wolfswood. Here beneath dragon gargoyles, it was foreign, foreboding, and he worked twice as hard, unwilling to let the cold claim spirits unaccustomed to its touch. At dusk he stood before the Iron Throne with Davos Seaworth and Tycho Nestoris. The hall lay empty, save a dozen guards and a handful of Braavosi clerks, shuffling parchment atop makeshift trestles. Pale smoke curled from braziers, rising among swords twisted into iron branches above the throne. One by one the candles guttered, starved of heat where wintry air poured through arrow slits. Davos spoke first. 200 barrels of fish from the islands, m'lord, salted but sound. The Braavosi convoy broke enough ice to bring them upriver. Another convoy follows with oats, smoked hare, cured pork. Son swears it. He glanced sidelong at Tycho. And Son swears on coin. Tycho dipped his chin. 40,000 golden dragons have been advanced against your coming harvest taxes. In spring the stone mill mint shall press new coin to replace clipped dragons, each stamped with King Stannis' sigil on the obverse, and the bank's vault upon the reverse. Counterfeits will be punished as treason. Then? Ned exhaled white breath. If spring comes, Maester Luwin fears the cold will deepen and linger beyond memory. Taco's face remained a mask carved of ebony. The Iron Bank survives winters in Bravos. It will survive here. He snapped his fingers. A clerk carried forward a sealed parchment. The king must sign further obligations before the next convoy departs. Payments on the solstice, regardless of weather. I will place it before him, Ned promised. But his ships returned half-sunk. He'll barter masts before midwinter. Naam. Taco's courteous incline held a hint of flint. Then barter. The bank accepts timber, gold, or hostages of recognized value. Davos stiffened, but Ned raised a placating palm. The king will decide. Taco stepped back, cloak whispering across frost. When the banker left the hall, Davos muttered, "Hostages now. Next he'll ask for tongues." "They ask for what they trust," Ned answered, but even he felt the chill of that demand. He watched his breath plume, endless gray curls that vanished in the gloom. The bank plays Sivas with kingdoms. We must learn the board, or see our sons become pieces. Now. A horn sounded in the courtyard below, thin and ragged through snow-laden air. Not the bells of alarm. This was the watchman's cry announcing riders. Ned's heart hitched. Robb had marched north to weave round Harrenhal and strike the Dreadfort from the east. If he had returned so swiftly, something had gone terribly wrong. He hurried down damp staircases to the outer yard, grease torches guttering overhead. There he found a column of riders not in wolf gray, but in white and black furs crusted with travel ice. The black cloaks marked them Night's Watch, yet the white stripes, woven of rare snow bear, he had never seen. Their leader swung down. A tall woman, lean and broad-shouldered, with eyes the pale green of new ice, and a sword slung across her back nearly as long as she was tall. "Lord Stark?" she asked, voice husky from cold. "I am Sir Lyra Mormont." Sworn Sword of Bear Island, and Ranger of the Watch. "I bring the Lord Commander's words." Behind her 2 more riders hoisted a casket of rough pine, sealed with pitch, so cold frost glazed its lid. Sir Lyra gestured, and they set it down before Ned. "Inside you will find the hand of a man who died twice." She knelt. Snow creaking beneath one knee. And a letter. Ned's fingers tingled as though frost bit through his gloves. He nodded at the guards. They prized the lid, and a gust of carrion air puffed out. So cold no stench rose, yet foulness lurked beneath. Wrapped in black silk lay a hand, gray, shrunken, fingers curved like talons. Around its wrist clung a crust of frozen blood. A blackened ring of ice encircled the index finger, fused to bone. "It moved," Lyra said quietly. "After death. It clutched at brothers in the night. We had to burn the rest. Then Sideral." Ned closed the lid. The letter. She produced a tube of elk horn, sealed with black wax. He cracked it. Inside, Maester Aemon's trembling script-filled thin parchment. "To Eddard Stark, Hand of the King, winter marches. The others stir in numbers unseen since the long night. Our ravens south fly blind. Storms break their wings. I send my words by riders sworn to steel. The dead do not rest. Send every man you can spare. The wall is not merely your border, it is the realm's last breath. I fear it may soon gasp." Ned's hand shivered, though whether from cold or dread he could not know. He glanced at Lyra. "How many of you came through?" "7, she said. "We lost 4 crossing the new ice on the Green Fork, another to Bolton outriders." Her lips tightened. His flayed manhunts even Night's Watch. The grit within her tone struck flint against Ned's resolve. He gestured to Davos, who stood by scowling at the pine box. "Escort Sir Lyra and her company to warm quarters. Fresh meat, mulled wine. Tonight we counsel." He met the woman's eyes. "The wall will not stand alone." As she bowed and followed Davos toward the kitchens, snow thickened, smothering footprints faster than masons laid stone. Ned stared out beyond the walls, across slush-coated roofs toward distant torchlights of encamped armies. Somewhere west, his son braced for Bolton's treachery. Somewhere east, Stannis prepared to march again. And now, from the farthest north, came a cry older than houses or crowns. He felt smaller than he had since boyhood, beneath all that weight of ice and night. Above the yard, the first true flakes of the blizzard arrived, wide as ravens' wings. They spiraled down on the casket like silent verdicts. Rob Stark watched the snow through a slit in the ruined keep of old stones. The courtyard below churned to pale sludge by thousands of hoofbeats. What had been earthen ramparts built in ancient days now served as makeshift redoubts against Bolton's vanguard. Yet they would not hold long. His scouts reported a column of 4,000 Bolton spears skirting the Blue Fork. Roose himself lurked in their shadows, better protected than any lord had a right to be. Worse, messages from the Neck told of iron-born reavers harrying Rills and Barrowton, their longships grounding through sheets of slush, where once only summer water swelled. Winter's tide dredged fresh horrors from every shore. In the tower's draft, Rob held one of Bolton's intercepted ravens. Flayed pink seal peeled open. The wolf is wounded. Pierce the heart while it beats. Addressed to Tywin. Proof enough for men of honor, though not for Frey or Bolton themselves. He had given copies to every bannerman, but suspicion gnawed. Would parchment sway when swords and snow pressed hunger at their doors? Caitlin entered, cloak frosty, grey wind padding behind. She carried 2 steaming mugs of pine needle tea. No word from White Harbor. Maester Colvin thinks storms crippled the rookeries. Rob accepted a mug. Steam clouded his face. Or Manderley faces raiders. He has levies enough and walls besides. She hesitated. But Aemon's raven. If the dead walk, they will find us marching to meet them, Rob said, fierceness sharpening his young features. But first Roose, Bolton, must answer. He sipped, grimacing at the bitter brew. When we move at dawn, grey wind ranges ahead. Lord Karstark will hold the ford with spears and make noise enough for 10,000. We circle south through the Willow Wood and strike where Bolton expects only Frey outriders. He rolled the map. I will end this filth. Caitlin watched flakes swirl against cracked glass. End him, yes, but spare those who rode for him in ignorance. Rob's stare softened. I will try, mother. That night, the blizzard thickened. Smothering cries of sentries, burying horse lines beneath white drifts. Yet before dawn, grey shadows stalked from the palisade gate. Rob, Greyjohn, Smalljohn, Meg Mormont, and 2,000 chosen spears, all muffled in snow-patched cloaks. They moved ghost-silent through dells where snow already lay a foot deep. Grey wind loped ahead, his breath pluming, hackles white-dusted. Half an hour past the Willow Wood, the dire wolf halted, nose lifted. Then he vanished into darkness, and his howl rolled back long and mournful. Bolton outriders lay in the clearing beyond, bunched around a fire to guard supply mules. The storm had muffled their watch. Rob's vanguard burst upon them like wolves on sleeping deer. Spear-skewered men half-armored, 2 fell ere they seized weapons. Those still living scattered, one stumbling into the fire, so sparks blossomed skyward. As grey wind tore down the last and Rob's men freed the mules, a horn sounded deeper in the forest, stark and shrill. Bolton's main body was closer than scouts reckoned. Rob jerked his horse round. Form column. Shield branches. Ride. Oh. They plunged among white-clad birches, muffling hooves with new snow. Behind, horns grew louder. Rob spared a thought for Karstark at the ford, desperate prayers for delay. Dawn glimmered pewter through storm when they reached the edge of a frozen meadow. There Rob ordered halt. Men formed ranks by rote, boots crunching. Bolton's van emerged from trees moments later, banners limp in gusts, spears jagged with frost. A shape at their head raised a pale, flayed man standard. Bolton's bastard son, rumored to wear men's skins, though none could confirm. Rob lifted his sword. Across the clearing, the bastard signaled return. The 2 hosts advanced. Snow dampened sounds until only breath and heartbeats filled the world. Caitlin watched from rear slope, clutching her cloak. The clash came like thunder, wood popping, metal screeching. Grey wind barreled into a knot of Bolton men, ripping throats. Greyjohn laid about with his 2-hander, scattering shields. Rob pressed forward, blade singing. But Bolton infantry doubled ranks, shoving with short spears and disciplined thrusts. Umbers roared curses as the wall held. A second horn pealed east. Frey cavalry outflanked, plunging at Caitlyn's position. She seized a bough, loosed an arrow that struck a horse's eye. The beast toppled, rider crushed. Mormont women fought around her with axes, red braids flying. On the front, Robb spied Roose Bolton himself behind the lines, pale eyes observing through snow veil. Rage surged. He wheeled, driving straight into the press. His guard carved a path. Grey Wind bounded beside. The bastard's spear point flicked at Robb's horse. Robb ducked, slashed, severed the shaft. Grey Wind lunged, jaws crushing the bastard's helm and head alike with a crunch that echoed. Bolton's men faltered. Robb broke through, the snow ahead eerily open. He spurred toward Roose. Yet a horn behind signaled disaster. Karstark at the ford had broken, outridden by riders in lion crimson. Tywin's reserve? Smaller but fresh, crashed into the ford's defenders, and now spilled into Robb's rear. He was caught between lion and flayed man. Fall back to Oldstones, Great John bellowed. Horns relayed. Robb cursed, wheeled Grey Wind aside. They withdrew in ragged files, carrying wounded, dragging corpses. Snow erased bloodspore but not the cries. Bolton did not pursue. Tywin's men contented themselves with survivors at the ford, slaughtering those too slow. By dusk, the remnants reached Oldstone's palisade. Karstark's banner was gone, half the umbers missing. Robb stood upon the ancient sepulchre of Florian the Fool, staring north where Bolton's fires dotted the dark like ember eyes. The wolf had bled. Winter wind moaned among ruins older than song. When Caitlyn found him, snow filmed his hair white. "I failed them," he rasped. She touched his shoulder. "You are not done," she said. "They will come again. We must hold until dawn, then slip south to River Run. Heal our wounds, forge anew." Robb closed his eyes. In the distance, a horn blown by foe or friend trembled through the frozen night. Dawn at King's Landing broke dim behind a gauze of sleet. Ned Stark gathered the council in the Tower of the Hand. Davos, Maester Tarle, Tycho, Lord Commander Barristan, and Sir Leroy Romont representing the watch. Only one chair sat empty. Stannis, for the king had ridden north at midnight with 500 mounted Stormlanders, seeking to rally garrisons along the Rose Road and Harry Renly stragglers before they could regroup. His absence left the capital under Ned's command. Lyra spoke first, voice edged with urgency. "The wall reports the Frostfang passes clogged by corpses walking. None rot. They hunt in packs, led by tall shapes like men carved from ice." She set upon the table an ice-flecked wicker cage. Inside squatted a raven, feathers pale as snow save one black streak across its breast. Its eyes were milky, dead. Yet when Lyra touched the bar it hissed, beak snapping. Frost rimed its iron bars. "We captured this 2 nights past when it tried to kill a rookery bird." Maester Tarle recoiled. Davos swore. Ned reached to touch the cage, then withdrew. Cold radiated like moonlight on midwinter. "When did ravens turn?" "The night we left Castle Black," Lyra said. "There were more." Ned faced Tycho. "Your bank wagers on kings, but there will be no crowns if ice devours us. Release a quarter of the treasury to the builders of the wall, stonecutters, miners, smiths. We mint coin on promise of spring. If winter wins, your debts are moot." "Nah." Tycho's brow furrowed deeper than Ned had seen. The Iron Bank does not invest in oblivion. Yet even a banker knows when to purchase shovels instead of jewels. He nodded once. "Done." Davos leaned in, voice low. "But coin can't march through snow. We need men." Barristan, silver hair gleaming, lifted his head. "Then call the banners of the city itself. Let the guilds raise carpenters, masons, chandlers. I will train them to spear and shield. They will defend their hearths with more fury than any sellsword." "Bane." Ned clasped the Lord Commander's forearm. "See it done." As council dispersed, Lyra held Ned back. I left a sister in Winterfell, Eilis. She fought wildling raiders once armed only with a cooking pot. When you ride north, bring her word. Bear Island fights for the wall. Ned managed a thin smile. I will. But when he returned to his chambers, resolving letters, his smile faltered. Sansa's latest missive from White Harbor lay on the desk. She wrote of dwindling stores, dread of sea-born raiders, and Bran's dreams of three-eyed ravens crying warnings. He penned reassurance, though his quill scratched lies he wished were true. Winter and war converged. Hope thinned as quickly as the candle wicks flickering in the draught. Renly Baratheon reached the island of Tarth Salty, battered and burning for vengeance. In Evenfall Hall's great galley he pored over maps with Sir Loras, Lord Selwyn Tarth, and his bannermen, those who could be gathered. Tyrell's strength had bled away. Half marched home to defend the Mander Valley. Half remained scattered in the storm-clogged Kingswood. 3,000 spears stood ready, no more. Yet a message awaited, borne by a Mirish Selsail captain promised double wages. Tycho Nestoris welcomed a conference aboard a neutral galley anchored off the Wendwater. The Iron Bank, the captain swore, remained open to alternative investments. Renly's eyes gleamed. If Stannis defaulted already, Braavos may seek a younger debtor. Loras frowned, but Renly clapped his shoulder. A king has many crowns, my friend, if he masters coin. They sailed at once, hugging coastlines under cover of squalls. 4 days out they found the Braavosi galley, white sail emblazoned with the vault. Renly boarded with Loras and Maester Kyrie, leaving most guards aboard the Honeywine Mistress. Braavosi crews demanded weapons peace-tied. Tycho awaited in a cedar-lined cabin, its hearth braziers glowing. He motioned Renly to sit beneath a painted panel of Braavosite and Datand. The banker wasted little formality. King Stannis draws upon future harvests to feed present wars, Tycho said. Future harvests fail under snow. The bank diversifies risk. Renly's grin never wavered. Diversify with me. Grant a line of credit, grain, arms, sellsword contracts. And when I claim King's Landing, you receive port duties across the narrow sea trade for a generation. Tycho steepled fingers. Collateral? For now. Renly produced a scroll. The marriage contract binding me to Margaery, and with her the Reach's wealth. Lord Mace will pledge Highgarden's gold mines and the old summer wine reserves in the Mander cellars. Tycho took the parchment, eyes flickering. Gold mines are promising. Summer wine less so, if winter endures. Yet the Reach is fertile. Ben? And loyal, Renly pressed. Stannis wins by fear. I by loyalty. A flicker of something, amusement, crossed the banker's features. We shall see which currency proves stronger. He affixed his seal atop Renly's and handed back a duplicate. The bank will extend an initial credit of 1 million dragons, payable in shipments of grain, steel, and Braavosi crossbow specialists. Interest begins new moon. Renly flashed white teeth. I'll pay you double within the year. Tycho dipped his quill. The Iron Bank appreciates confidence. As Renly departed into snow-laden wind, Loras drew close. We trust bankers over blood. We trust whoever funds the crown, Renly said. Gold is the marrow of kingship. With this we raise fresh armies, Stormlander, Dornish Reachmen. We march again before spring thaw. Loras stared out to sea where waves frothed gray. Spring may come late. Then we fight sooner. At Winterfell, white wolves howled beneath wan starlight. Sansa watched from a crenel on the inner wall, cloak wrapped around her slender frame, hair unbound to catch drifting flakes. Beneath, the yard bustled with fearful energy, Manderly men reinforcing gates, Risewell riders arriving with bales of thatch and barley, shopwives carrying cheese and cured venison into cellars. Maester Luwin's ravens returned erratic, but each letter spoke of sea raiders, burnt crofts, vanishings in the night. Ghosts, some whispered. Skin stealers. The winter wind moaned like a woman's cry. Sansa closed her eyes, remembering the warmth of the capital's sunlit gardens. Lemon cakes, false courtly smiles. Here frost cut deeper than courtiers' barbs, Yet she felt more alive than in silk. She had taken to riding the battlements each dawn, checking guard rotations, speaking courage into green boys from Deepwood. She was daughter of the North again, not some prince's pawn. Below, Rickon chased Shaggy Dog across snowy turf, squealing. Bran, propped on Hodor's back, guided two orphans through archery shapes. Sansa prayed her father would ride through the gate soon with Robb beside. Until then she played sentinel, each heartbeat an oath. When the first Direwolf howl rose from beyond the walls, a deep, wild note carried by bitter wind, Sansa felt it in her marrow. Other wolves answered, not the castle pack, but voices of distant kin. A shadow flitted along the tree line southeast. Torchlight caught glint of eyes. Scouts raced to the wall shouting of strangers. But sentries returned reporting nothing. The shapes vanished like dreams before dawn, though claw marks scored snowbanks where no wolf's paw fit. Maester Luwin spoke softly that evening. In harsher winters, direwolves roamed farther for prey. Perhaps hunger drives them. Sansa nodded, yet dread lingered. She dreamed that night of shadows slipping over walls, eyes blue as glacier hearts. On the narrow sea, Skagos icebergs drifted farther south than sailors recalled. One jutted like a palisade of white knives against sunset. Upon its ridge a figure stood, armored in plates of black ice, eyes lambent azure. Below, whites shuffled, leading fresh-killed sailors bound by seaweed rope. At a silent command, the corpses knelt and drank seawater until lungs filled. Flesh hardened, fingers sharpened to claws. When the Night's King turned, wind howled in his wake, pushing the iceberg southwest toward Gulltown's shipping lanes. At Eastwatch by the sea, a horn blew 3 times on a night of blizzard and black tide. Its echoes died unanswered. Ravens burst from the rookery next dawn, only to fall ice-encrusted into the surf. Of the garrison, nothing remained but footprints leading seaward, abruptly ending at the water's frozen edge. King Stannis reached the village of Fellwood after days of harrowing marches, along half-buried roads. Snowdrifts swamped ox carts, many drowned horses or snapped axles. Still, he pushed, for reports placed Renly at Tarth resupplying. But instead of Renly, he found Fellwood reduced to char and bone. Houses burned, bodies lay stiff, hacked by axes. Iron-born sigils carved in door lintels told the tale. One survivor, a boy scarcely 4, huddled beneath the charred sept, his father's knucklebone necklace clenched in fist. When Stannis knelt, the boy recoiled until the king offered a strip of dried apple from his own pouch. Small fingers took it, trembling. Stannis's jaw worked. Raiders strike our shores and my brother schemes with roses, while snow buries the realm. He stood, ash swirling around Greaves. We march east to Blackwater Rush. Then north for Dire Den. Every village we pass receives grain. No exceptions. If any lord hoards, we hang him. Sir Richard Horpe voiced caution. Hanging lords breeds revolt. Hunger breeds worse, Stannis said. And I will answer the Ironborn in kind. Seaworth sails for Dragonstone this night, refits 2 galleys as rams. We break their line outside Duskendale. He strode through ashes to his horse. Snowflakes hissed on embers, steam coiled like spectral serpents. A storm gathered at horizon's edge, green thunderheads pulsing. Melisandre stood watching, her red gown stark against char. Storm, shadow, and fire. She murmured. The Lord of Light tests you. Stannis mounted. He will find me unbroken. Roose Bolton's host encamped at the ruins of Harrenhal, the blackened towers looming like twisted ribs against zinc skies. Snow sluiced through shattered ramparts. Wind whistled across slag-fused stones, still strangely warm where dragonfire had melted them centuries past. In the main hall, Bolton dined with Tywin Lannister. Candles flickered, casting twin halos on Tywin's close-cropped hair and Roose's pallid cheeks. Frey envoys waited near pillars, eyes darting. Tywin set down a goblet of dark arbor red. Robb Stark bleeds yet will not die. We've cut his host nearly in half, still he clings. He tapped knuckles on the table. I need the twins secured to strangle his retreat, the neck barred against reinforcement, and the northern lords in fear. Bolton's voice flowed like oil. I can shatter him if given the north, carve out his heart at Winterfell, proclaim the Dreadfort paramount. My levy stands whence the snows settle enough for March. A crown for a butcher? Tywin arched a brow. A flayed man is less trouble than a hungry wolf, Bolton murmured. And loyalty may be bought with skin. Tywin considered. First prove your steel. He gestured to a guard. The man dragged forward a captive. Lord Karstark's eldest son, Rickard, shackled, tunic blood-spattered. Bolton drew a slender blade, its edge pale pink. An air flayed sends a sharper message than a father's head, he said, stepping close. Rickard Karstark spat in his face. Bolton carved away a strip of cheek, but the prisoner did not scream. He glared, alive with fury. Tywin watched without flinch. A message indeed. But remember, fear decays. Gold endures. Bendo. Bolton's eyes gleamed. I keep both. In King's Landing, Ned convened a larger assembly in the Dragon Pit. Its vast roof long gone, but its enclosing walls sheltered from wind. Under crackling torches stood guildmasters, septons, foreign captains, and 30 black brothers of the Watch newly arrived. Sir Lyra spoke from a rubble dais. We seek volunteers, men of trade and craft, women who can heal, boys swift enough to bear water. The wall needs every hand. Turn away now, and winter will not spare your door. Many lowered gazes. But then from the crowd stepped Tobho Mott, master armorer. He pledged 20 apprentices to forge arrowheads in the frost. The Guild of Chandlers offered tallow for torches. The Silent Sisters pledged burial shrouds, morbid but necessary. One by one, others spoke. Ned felt tears form, warm against cold air. When the pledges were sealed, he assented to speak. I march for White Harbor in 3 days, he announced. Those who ride with me shall face snow, hunger, and perhaps worse. Yet if we do not ride, nothing awaits but darkness. No rousing oration, just stark truth. Even so, voices rose in sturdy assent. He glimpsed Gendry among the armorer's boys, broad shoulders squared. The lad met his gaze, nodded. Ned sent ravens that night. Orders for grain wagons to follow. For maesters to gather medicines. For every smith to hammer spare links of chainmail. He slept little, quill-scratching furs. In dreams he walked a frozen forest where blue shadows danced. Lyanna stood among them, whispering his name. But when he reached, she crumbled like frost-rimed leaves. The day Ned's column departed, snow clogged the king's road knee-deep. Nonetheless, 600 marched, spearmen, archers, carpenters, smiths, and 24 wagons, piled with barley. Davos commanded the vanguard. Sansa watched from the ramparts until her father's banner vanished into swirling white, gray direwolf rippling once, then gone. She clutched the cold stone crenel, eyes stinging. At dusk Tycho boarded a fast galley bound for Braavos. He wished Ned safe travels with the faintest bend of head. The banker's eyes held calculation and something that might be respect. When he reached his cabin, he opened a ledger, dipped quill, and tallied profits against risk. In one margin he wrote, "If winter conquers, invest in spring." 3 nights out, Ned's column reached the town of Hayford, where smoke plume rose above broken walls. Greyjoy raiders had struck then fled. Villagers huddled in burnt shells. Ned left 10 wagons of grain and half his healers. A mother clutching a frost-bitten infant wept in his arms. I will send more, he promised, yet guilt gnawed to leave them. Marching meant choices that stung worse than snow blindness. Steadily the column moved north, past Maidenpool frozen tidal flats, across cracked fords of the Trident where dead fish floated belly up trapped beneath new ice. Ravens circled overhead, far more than usual, large, silent, eyes like chips of midnight. At night they perched on wagons, watching men huddle. Lyra cursed them, claiming unnatural hunger, and ordered fires kept high. Near Midler Point, They found green shoots pushing through snow. Willow rib sprouts, incongruous as summer. Maester Tarla bent to study them. Warm currents from Crackclaw Point sometimes birth oddities, he muttered. Yet the air was frigid. When they camped, some claimed the sprouts glowed faintly, as though moonlit from within. By morning the shoots had wilted, edges black with frost. At River Run, Rob Stark lay feverish. Caitlin sat at his bedside while Maester Vyman applied willow paste to a gash along his ribs. Poison, he sighed. A rag dipped in fenbane scraped him in battle. The fever burned hotter each dusk, robbing Rob of coherent speech. Gray wind padded circles at the door, low growls vibrating in his chest. Outside the keep, the river rose, ice chunks bobbing. Tywin's host ringed the northern bank, siege lines humming with activity. Crossbow bolts hissed daily. Food dwindled. Once again River Run faced strangulation. Caitlin convened the war council. Brynden Blackfish gaunt from wounds. Edmure bracing himself against shame of prior defeat. Great John gnarled rage at son missing. Galbart Glover bearing fresh news of Carhold razed by Ironborn. Spirits frayed. We can't break siege alone, Brynden admitted. We need Ned, and Stannis, and the Vale. But the Vale sat behind its bloody gate, still neutral. Caitlin closed her eyes. Then we must send word by air none dare clip. She rose, strode to the rookery, and selected a fierce white raven bred for winter flights. She wrote, Father lies wounded by poison. River Run besieged. Winter is here. Ride swiftly, or all falls. She signed Eddard Stark's name, hoping her husband would forgive. The raven launched into swirling snow, wings beating against night. She looked east, imagining Ned's column trudging somewhere beyond the hills, their breaths frosty pennants of resolve. Hurry, she whispered. 2 days later, Ned's vanguard skirmished with Bolton scouts near the Twins of Stone Hedge. 5 of Lyra's rangers fell. Others returned bearing grim intelligence. Bolton and Tywin prepared a final hammer strike against River Run timed with starving garrison and winter surge. Ned's column lacked strength to break siege alone, yet he could not turn back with wall desperation clawing north. He sought counsel by flickering brazier. Davos argued for speed. We ride light to River Run, smash Tywin's flank, then press north in spring. Lyra countered, the wall cannot wait. Others march, while men quibble. Maester Tarla whispered fear. If the dead cross, there will be no south to aid. Ned listened to each. At last he spoke. Then we divide once more. Davos, take 200 horse, the best swords. Ride by night to River Run. Break the siege or bleed Tywin until he withdraws. Lyra, I march with you to Moat Cailin, and on to Castle Black. He clasped each wrist. We meet again beneath the wall come spring, or in the halls of our fathers. So the column split at dawn, banners parting like sundering roads of fate. Ned watched Davos ride west into snow swirl, black sails of cloaks billowing behind. He muttered a silent prayer. Then he turned north. Far above, beyond the last villages of man, the Night's King gathered his lieutenants on a ridge overlooking the shivering sea. A storm of ice shards spun about them like maddened stars. He extended a hand. In its palm lay a coin minted newly by Braavosi but cold as vacuum. The vault emblem indistinct beneath frost. He closed his fingers. Coin cracked, shattered silent. Behind him countless shapes emerged. A glacier in motion, wights in mail of rime, giants with antlers of ice, polar bears whose eyes burned blue. The Night's King lifted his spear of moonglass. With a hissing roar like tearing silk, the horde advanced southward, each footstep freezing the very air. Deep winter swallowed the realm. Villagers anywhere north of the Neck huddled in silent dread, each dusk, praying to gods old and new. In the south, snow blanketed the dunes near Sunspear, thin but real, the first in living memory. Dornish children danced in it, elders wept. At the citadel, archmaesters gathered in secret conclave, debating white ravens and black omens. At Pike, Euron Greyjoy laughed from the sea-stone chair, black eyes shining, as his priests spoke of dead fish walking ashore. Yet hope flickered, fragile as candle flame. In King's Landing guild apprentices trained nightly under Barristan's tutelage, forming shield walls, where once they swung hammers. In Winterfell Sansa organized grain rations and patrols, learning command with each decision. At Storm's End Stannis drilled men even as hunger nipped heels. Discipline forged spearheads harder than hunger. And Robb Stark, fever receding, rose on shaking legs to greet a raven from his father. "Hold! Help rides." Snow kept falling, but beneath it restless roots waited. Spring was memory, yet memory bore promise. Across frost-choked rivers, men still bled red. Across haunted forests, deery wolves howled truth into star-studded dark. In a ravine east of the last river, Ned Stark camped beneath a gnarled weirwood, leafless and skeletal, red sap frozen like icicles along its face. He knelt, placing hand to trunk. "Old gods," he murmured, breath mingling with drifting snow, "guide my children and this realm." Wind answered, rustling branches though none bore leaves. He rose, meeting Lyra's steady gaze. "We ride at first light." High above, the aurora shimmered green and violet across a sky clear for the first time in days, as if heavens themselves lit a path. The Northmen below took heart. Beyond all reckonings, stars still burned.